1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast Soundcheck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast Soundcheck. Tuesday show live. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hello and welcome to the Royal Blue Podcast. It's Tuesday, the 8th of July. We are live and I am your host, Ian Croll. Joining me in the Royal Blue studio today to talk all things Everton, we've got the Echo's Everton FC correspondent, home and away, Joe Thomas. Joe, how are you? All good?
Yeah, not too bad. Cheers, man.
Good. We've got plenty to talk about today.
Yeah, we have.
Also joining us is this, number 2 in space of 7 days?
Yeah, back to back.
Paul Wheelock, Echo's sports editor. You okay?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, really good. Thanks for inviting me back on, mate.
Oh, good. I must confess, I've been off for a couple of days. This is my first day back, so I'm not entirely back to 100% yet. I'm not entirely feeling it, but I think the news that we've seen today, Joe, with regards to Thierno Barry has perked me up a little bit. So we will get into that. Plenty of content, plenty of news to speak about. Before we do get into today's show, this is the first Royal Blue podcast since the tragic death of Diogo Jota and his brother Andre. I just wanted to say that along with everyone here at the Liverpool Echo and the Royal Blue podcast, we are deeply saddened by the news and we offer our sincere condolences to Diogo and his family. Today's agenda, Everton have agreed with a fee with Villarreal for Thierno Barry, with the forward set to undergo a medical. So the podcast will predominantly dominate that topic. We will get into that, but there is a few other tidbits knocking around, plenty more transfer news to get into, with reports of Everton being linked with Aston Villa midfielder John McGinn, as well as Manchester City midfielder James McAtee. So plenty of bits knocking around, and if we've got time, we will get into all of that. As always, give us a thumbs up, drop us a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Your support, as always, is greatly appreciated. Plenty of comments on the live stream, so get as many in as possible, and I will read them out. We will start with Thierno Barry, Joe. I'll just read a couple of lines from your piece that you did this morning, which you can read on the Liverpool Echo website, which does give a detailed update on what is happening or what is expected to happen over the next couple of days. So Thierno Barry is set to undergo a medical with Everton after the club reached a deal with Villarreal for the forward. The 22-year-old is moving closer to joining David Moyes' squad after talks between the Blues and the Liga side reached a conclusion. As previously reported, negotiations had been ongoing for some time, but by the middle of last week, there was growing hope Barry would become the Blues' second signing of the summer. Joe, the fee is believed to be in the region of £27.5 million. Good business?
Yeah, I think so. Good business in the context of the £34 million release clause. Yeah. Everton and Villarreal have been in talks for quite some time over this, and we've reported that. And I think probably most people who are listening to this or watching it will have noted that early last week we were reporting that Everton were on the brink of quite a few things, expecting Idrissa Gueye to confirm, Michael Keane to confirm, and for things to progress with Thierno Barry. Obviously, it's taken a bit of time for all three of them to come into fulmination, but they're there now. Essentially, we've already had Keane. His deal was announced on Friday. Idrissa Gueye's yesterday, being Monday, and now we have the breakthrough with Thierno Barry. So medical set for him. Obviously, it's still not quite done yet, but I think even and I'm particularly cautious on these things, was at a point where by the middle of last week, I think I was saying that he looks likely to become Everton's second summer signing. And obviously things have moved a lot further forward since then. So yeah, can't say I knew a lot about him before this season. I'd be lying to anybody if I said I'd been out scouting him or anything like that. It was a name that when it first came to links with Everton, it wasn't one that was familiar with me. But I think I think Everton need another forward with Dominic Calvert-Lewin having gone. I think there's questions over Youssef Chermiti and his ability to kind of provide competition and cover for Beto. I think I've said this throughout the summer that in the right conditions, I think a loan for him where he can go and get first team football under his belt would be really useful. But in order to do that, Everton need a second striker. Thierno Barry, he's young, he's raw, but he's an exciting prospect, and I think he's the type of player that Everton needs to be going for in this rebuild where they can. Young, decent fee, vast potential, a lot of upside there. Can Everton get him before he really bursts onto the scene, and can the club and the player grow together, and hopefully that's what's going to happen.
I think, Paul, what Joe was saying there, like we used the phrase like bursting onto the scene. It seems to be a phrase used a lot. And Joe is right, by the way, but is it the profile of Thierno Barry? We don't know too much about him. I certainly don't. But is it the profile of him, someone who's raw, as Joe mentioned again? He hasn't burst onto the scene as such. He's obviously from a different league, maybe not, no Premier League experience, lacking in any really footballing experience, obviously played for the under-21s as well. Is it typical of the type of player that you thought Everton would go for for a striker, as though like a main striker?
Yeah, potentially as a striker, because I suppose if Everton would go for a more experienced option, the money would have been vast, wouldn't it? You've seen some of the... Obviously, we're not in that kind of market for Gyökeres, who looks like to be going to Arsenal, Isak or players like that. But people with a proven record in top leagues are going to probably cost more than Everton can afford to pay this summer, given the amount of signings they're going to have to make. So I think there will have to be a mix in terms of the recruitment between experience and potential. And I think certainly a forward, 22, is that right, Joe? He's 22 at the moment, Thierno Barry. He's got a lot of that. He's got a lot of potential. He seems to have made a step up in his career. It's still been a very short career, but from Belgium to Switzerland to Villarreal, I think he's got a good goal-scoring record in each of the divisions that he's played. Obviously, it's a massive step up to the Premier League, even though La Liga and Villarreal are a very good side, finished fifth, I think, last season. La Liga is a great standard of football, but obviously the Premier League, again, is probably the most competitive in the world at the moment. So, I'm really pleased. Like, as like Joe, got to be honest, I think I'd heard his name knocking about, in the gossip columns and things like that, but without having a great deal of insight about him. What I've read about him seems that he likes to play off the shoulder. He's good in behind. He's strong. He's fast, and it looks like he's got a variety of goals. But if I have heard that word, is what Joe rightly used there, is raw. So shouldn't put too much pressure on him. But it's great, isn't it, to be in this position where we're back spending decent money on a young prospect and a young striker. So yeah, made up. It's looking like it's going to go for him. Just
sticking with you on this one, Paul. Just important now that Everton, I know the deal's not done yet, but hopefully it is going to be done in the next couple of days. But important that a deal for a striker has been done fairly quickly in the window. Obviously, Calvert-Lewin's left. We're only really left with one senior striker in Beto. Chermiti, we don't know what's going to happen with him. Its future's slightly uncertain, whether he goes on loan or whether he sticks around. But with Calvert-Lewin leaving, Barry coming in, we probably do need another striker. I don't think there's any question on that, but allays a few fears with regards to, we're going to be left short up top coming at the start of the season.
Yeah, definitely. If it all goes through, injuries, barring injuries aside, we should have two to choose from, because I think Joe's right there with Youssef Chermiti. It does feel like, even though I think we need 3 strikers in the squad, just for the good of his development alone would be the best option for him this season. And, if we get to the first game away at Leeds on that Monday night and Barry and Beto are strikers, we'll still have a few weeks probably to look and potentially in the loan market, because I know you've written before, Joe, that's going to be an option again, because there's just so many positions to fill. But to have 2 in the door, and hopefully he's in the door by the end of the week or early next week, he can have a good pre-season with his new teammates. Yeah, it's a big thing. Yeah, there's so many positions to fill, but we only had 1 striker. So yeah, I agree, Ian. I think it was important to do early.
Yeah, and Joe, just sticking with that, we've had a comment here from Shelley, Toffee Blue, says, we need another 6 at least through the door before Roma, so they can build the team bond together and get to know each other. But, just keeping that connected to the Barry situation. I guess it is important that he comes in early, gets to know the players, gets to know the manager, what the manager expects from him. Obviously, we've got a pre-season match coming up fairly soon. We know the competitive matches are still a good couple of weeks away. But usually Everton, let's face it, wait a good couple of weeks into the window before moving for a significant signing. But like for me, this is fairly early.
Yeah, well, I think this summer's a lot different because of the stability and the resources of the Freaking Group, but also because of the additional leeway now that they've got from a PSR perspective, which started obviously on July the 1st of the new financial year. So, I think we were always going to be in a situation where up until June things were going to be, and we've repeatedly said that things were going to be, quietish. And it was really going to be a case of from July the 1st onwards that things would pick up. And obviously, it's taken a few days longer than that. But the Thierno Barry talks, which were underway before then, have clearly advanced, and they've got a breakthrough now. So I think the nature of this summer and the extent of the rebuild that's needed requires early action, or action as early as possible. And that is July because of all the different financial reasons, and it's good to see this get over the line. Well, hopefully it'll get over the line very soon, and they can build around it because like the poster just says, they need a lot of players, and the sooner they can get them in, the better. When you look at what Moyes has done so far, and you look at the other deals that we've had recently, the Michael Keane and the Idrissa Gueye ones. I wrote extensively about Michael Keane at the weekend, the value that Moyes places in almost culture and continuity. He wants a thread of stability running through the side from the last few years into the new stadium. He's nervous about the transition. Mm-hmm. It's going to be, even on a conservative estimate, there's going to be a huge amount of turnover in players this summer. And then on top of that, you've got the move to the new stadium. So he wants there to be a solid foundation of players that already know the club, players that already know the fan base, and players that he already knows and can place a degree of trust in, not just in terms of what they can do on the pitch, but also in their presence and their personality and their maturity off it. Now, with Coleman, with Keane, with Gueye, he's got that foundation now. So now's the time where it's like you've dotted the I's, you've crossed the T's. Now's the time to go out there and be a little bit more ambitious now. Now's the time to go and spend some money, add some quality to this core that you've already got that survived from last season.
You're going to know better than me on this, but the fee or his release clause was roughly 34 million. I think it was like 40 million euros in the region. If reports are right, it's 27.5. Now they've been in negotiations for a while, weeks it seems. Do you feel a more tougher or robust negotiating team from Everton when it comes to transfers? Obviously, we could have, if we wanted to, if not desperate as such, but if we thought we really want this player, we could have just met the valuation, but we seem to have negotiated it down.
I think it's too early to say, really, because we don't have a pattern of deals from which we can cross reference. And we also don't necessarily know the full details of Michael Keane and Idrissa Gueye's new contracts, and they were both amongst the highest earners at the club last season on their previous contracts. And whilst the knowledge that Michael Keane was going to be a squad player and a backup centre back, and the knowledge that David Moyes hopes to kind of build his midfield almost not away from Idrissa Gueye, but he wants to move to a midfield that's less reliant on Idrissa Gueye, because sooner or later, he's 35, he's 36 in September. Eventually, there'll come a point where he can't be the fantastic player that he was even last season. So those factors would have formed the backdrop for those conversations. But I don't know I don't know what the wages came down to, if they came. I don't know how much of it was. So obviously both came late in the summer, where the deals got on the line, because at the end of the day, Everton said, well, actually, we'll compromise on wages because we just want the trust in the players to stay here. Or were they going for so long because Everton were driving a hard bargain? I don't quite know. With the £27.5 million for Everton, there'll be bonuses and things like that on top of that. I think that when you look at the noises that have been coming out of Villarreal over the past 10 days or so, it's been quite clear that they've been open to negotiations. They said the right things in that they want to try and they want to keep the player. They want to keep it. Any deal would be close to the 34 as possible. But there's also been a clear kind of vein running through their conversations, saying that they understand that that if a club comes in, that they have to be open to doing it. He's only been there for a year, so they're going to make a substantial profit on him. And I think that. they were open to, as I say, open to negotiations, really. So I think there was always a deal to be had here. And I think that, again, another line that kind of come from Villarreal bosses was that if the player wanted it, I think they were willing to be a bit more, concede a bit more.
Yeah.
So Thierno Barry pushed for it. They were never going to stand in his way. I do think that what we could probably, the biggest indication that we've got of a new transfer of the leadership team and their approach so far is Jab Branthwaite. That was a deal that we all knew was coming. It was something they had to do this summer, really. Obviously, he was under contract for a long time anyway, but you couldn't really continue in the contradictory position of, for a second summer, telling people that he's not for sale and that he's worth 70, 80 million pounds, but also paying him the contract of a player that's just broken into the first team, having been a youth player before that. There was potential for those to become protracted. There were potential for issues on both sides. There was interest from Champions League clubs in Jab Branthwaite. He knows he could have gone somewhere else and got a lot more money and probably European exposure, and with that boosted his chances of playing in the World Cup next year, given what Thomas Tuchel has said about the importance of players playing in Europe. The fact that they got over the line so swiftly, I think it was less than a fortnight from when I broke that talks were formally underway. To the deal getting done suggests that this is a team behind the closed doors at Everton that know the value in just getting things done and getting things done swiftly. And hopefully that's something that they'll continue for the rest of this month and August, because I think, as much as we want Everton to be clever and savvy when it comes to finances, we don't want them to enter a new world of new financial firepower, but perhaps do what they did last time and be a little bit too overeager in what they can promise to people, and then end up paying for it in the long term. But time is of the essence. Time is valuable. There's a lot of change that's going to be happening at Everton this summer, and the more players that they can get in sooner enough so they can start gelling together, bonding together for the new season, I think the better.
Paul, I think as a fan base, or fans, me included in this, by the way, I'm sure yourself, we can be naturally impatient when it comes to transfers. We know how, difficult it can be to get these things over the line. However, with 55 days left of the transfer window, if my maths is right, it does feel like a number of boxes have kind of already been ticked. Ones that you would definitely want to tick early on from the start of the window. So, Alcaraz signed, previously on loan. Gay retained, very important player. Fourth choice centre-back, retained. Michael Keane is obviously that fourth choice centre-back. A few high earners off the bill. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Decore, another one. And now, seemingly a striker on his way in. If you were going to make a tick list of the first things you'd want to do at the start of the transfer window or pre-season, I don't care what anyone says, certainly for me, they would be, your top 5, your top 6 list. So in that respect, plenty of time still left. But how do you assess Everton's, pre-season transfer windows so far?
Yeah, I think it's been pretty good. I think, as you say, they've answered a lot of questions that needed answering. It's difficult, isn't it, when you've got kind of the superpowers at the top of the Premier League. They can make moves early. They had the early transfer window for the clubs competing in the Club World Cup, and they've just got the financial firepower to do these deals, these mega deals, because they've got the money to do it. But I think Everton have done okay. Alcaraz, as you say, was one, I think, as the fans wanted. He did more than enough in the short spell he had on loan last season. Barry sounds an exciting prospect. And yeah, Keane was a big one. Idrissa Gueye, that was the one contract out of all of them I definitely wanted to like to stay. Coleman, for the reasons, I know he's not playing anywhere near as much as he did, but everyone knows the value that he brings to the club, and what Joe talked about earlier in terms of kind of this experience that's going to be needed for a major transition. And Michael Keane, I think we spoke about this with Tony last week on podcast. I think that was quite an important one, and your piece was tremendous, Joe. It was a real insight into the player, not just the player on the field, but what he was like off the field, and that kind of eased a bit of tension in the defence, because you've now got 4 centre backs. If O'Brien is still going to be first choice right back, that's fine, because then maybe a right back's not as important because you've got Paston and Coleman as backup, and then maybe all of a sudden do they need just someone who can play on the left, if not in front of Mikolenko, who I think is a good, solid player, but has obviously got room for improvement in terms of as an attacking fullback. All of a sudden, if, say, before the start of the season, we just signed one left back, I'd be quite happy. Obviously going to have to get a backup goalkeeper for Pickford, But all of a sudden, the kind of base, which, to be fair to Sean Dyche, had a lot of success with, and Moyes continued it with the clean sheets last season. It's looking pretty good back there. Can't forget that. I think, was it only Raya and Sells who had more clean sheets than Pickford last season? You know, real strong base to build on. And now, I think there's one or two positions further forward where we have to get first choice for those. So I think it's been a pretty solid start. Yeah, you know, Decore, I think it was probably the right time for him to move on. Been a great servant and a massive player for Everton. I think I've said it on this podcast, I wouldn't have minded Calvert-Lewin staying, but I think, you know, the longer the summer wore on, bar from an interview here and there, it always felt like he was going to go. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way it's gone. Really excited to see what comes next, because as some of the listeners have been saying, there's still a lot more to do, but maybe not so much in defence anymore. Maybe I think they've sorted that pretty well.
I mean, would you agree with that, Joe, from what Paul was saying? Obviously, there's a section of the tick list already boxed off. We had a big debate with some of the audience a couple of weeks ago about what was more the priority, the right back position or the left back position. Moving forward now, what would your tick list be? I mean, surely a right winger would have to be high on the priority list, even another central midfielder. Again, just to add another one in there, it's so interesting what Paul said about the right back situation. I guess it just all depends on what happens with Patterson. I guess it all comes down to that.
Yeah, I think the right back position is one that, you know, I would hope that they would try and get sorted this summer. Yeah, they've gone into the last few seasons. 12 months ago they went into the last season saying, you know, if things don't work out with Coleman and Patterson, they've got enough cover within the side to be able to deal with it. And you know, we start the season at Brighton, and Ashley Young is playing out of position on the right back, gets torn to shreds by Kaoru Mitoma. He gets sent off, and then we're going to Tottenham Hotspur, and it's your options are Mason Holgate or Roman Dixon. So, you know, we can see, albeit that, you know, Jake O'Brien has gone in and played well when he did play in that position for David Moyes. You know, we've seen how quickly it can come back to bite you if you don't make the required decisions and signings in certain positions. So right back has been an area where I think that since Patterson started to have his injury struggles, since it's become clear that Patterson is struggling to play a lot of games each season, I think that it's something that needs to be addressed. So I'd hope that they would try and do that this summer. I think the main areas, I mean, they desperately need right wingers, desperately. Yeah. And I think they need centre midfielders as well. I think they need a couple. And depending on how much of the budget is left after Thierno Barry, and my position is I believe that they would still have money to spend, you know, and on a couple of players. I would be looking to invest that money on a quality right winger and a quality centre midfielder. That's where I'd want to invest, buying quality. And then I'd look to get a right back as well. And then you could maybe sort the rest out with frees and loans and maybe, you know, bring in squad players. But I'd probably want another starting centre midfielder or someone that's capable of starting in centre midfield. And I definitely want a leading right winger.
Well, we're getting a couple of questions on individuals who we've been linked with. So we'll come on to that in a sec. Just read out a couple of comments first. Mark Foster agrees with us basically. He says we need a right winger with real pace. We also badly need a ball-carrying centre midfielder. Our ball retention in centre midfielder is not good enough. Hence, Ghana has such high stats regarding getting ball retrievals, which is probably true.
I think both that makes sense. And yes, to say, like, I think that they need at least one goalkeeper with experience to back up for Jordan Pickford. You know, they're up in Scotland at the minute, and they only keep because they've let the players that had international action at the end of the season have a slightly prolonged break. You know, Harry Tyre is the most senior goalkeeper there, and Harry Tyre's had two fantastic loans. You know, he's done really well at Chesterfield, and then at Blackpool. But there's no two ways about it. It would be a significant step up to have him even as third choice goalkeeper this season. You can probably get away with him as third choice goalkeeper. It'd be good experience for him. But they need somebody that's got experience, top flight experience, I think, to act as a deputy, as Jordan Pickford. I do think they need someone that can cover left back. I think they need a first choice right back. I think they need two on the right wing. I'd spend money on one and maybe try and use the loan market for the other. I think they probably need a couple of centre midfielders, but like I said, I think I'd invest in a centre midfielder and then see what else is on the market. So
just sticking with that one, Joe, for you there. So Mickey Blue says, just sticking with the wingers, sorry, Ndai is right-footed on the left, and he thinks, I reckon Moyes is going to give Patterson a proper go. Just sticking with the Ndai one. Ndai's played on the right for Senegal in the past couple of games or past couple of weeks when he played England and did very well by all accounts. I didn't watch the game. If he was to bring in another winger or two, would you expect, or could you foresee Moyes swapping the wingers around a little bit, interchanging them, or would you expect them just to keep them fixed in the positions that they would preferably be in?
I think it was quite telling what they did at the back end of last season with Ndai and where possible he kept him on the left, and he kept him on the left at a time when Everton weren't really getting anything from the right wingers that they had. It was always a problem last season. Lindstrom and Harrison both struggled for end product. They both worked. Their work rate was fantastic, and defensively they did a really solid job. But Everton never really. They tried Dwight McNeil out there as well. They tried Iliman Ndiaye a little bit. They never quite found a solution out there. Now, look, they had a bit of a mismatch of an attacking lineup for most of the season because that's just where the squad has been for a while. And Iliman Ndiaye played well for Senegal against England on the right. I think at the moment, from what I've seen of him, I would prefer him on the left, and I think on the left you've got options because I think that's where Dwight McNeil's strongest as well. And also we saw, albeit I much preferred him in the centre midfield role, we saw that Carlos Alcaraz played out on the left as well. So really, I would want to go out and get specialist right wingers. There's value in versatility and flexibility, but I think Everton have players that can do that. We're already talking about Jake O'Brien as having the potential to cover right back. You may get into a situation where if something was to happen to Vitaly Mykolenko, that Jared Branthwaite ends up on the left for the odd game or two. You look at James Garner and his versatility. He's been used in centre midfield. He's been at right back, right wing back, right midfield. And you look at where Carlos Alcaraz and Dwight McNeil played across the lineup last season. I think really what Everton now need is they need specialists, and that's what I'd be in the market for, particularly on the right wing. You see Jack Harrison's name get mentioned. Obviously, I think he was best for Leeds when he was on the left. I think that's a crowded position for Everton at the moment. I would want someone to come in on the right.
I do agree with Joe. Specialist players in specialist positions. However, McNeil, when he came back from injury, did play on the right a couple of times and almost used in that inverted winger position. I thought he did fairly well, to be honest. We know we're going to be looking for a right back, but I guess you can't see McNeil's position being on the right hand side as a permanent solution, really.
No, it just feels a bit imbalanced for me. That's why, like when we got linked with Jack Grealish, don't get me wrong, a fully motivated, fully fit, firing Jack Grealish would be a fantastic addition to any side because he's only 29, but we just seem to have a lot of players in that kind of central attacking, left attacking midfield kind of at the moment, which it's probably the one position in the squad that we're kind of overly stocked because Ndiaye, McNeil, Alcaraz all seem to kind of favour that kind of area. So I'm with Joe and yourself, Ian, really. We need an out right winger and we need some pace. We need some pace. All three of those players are lovely footballers. And Ndiaye's quick in terms of his feet. McNeil's not quick in terms of his pace, but he's got great feet. And Alcaraz is great with moving the ball. But I can understand the links to Ben Doak earlier in the season. Now that would be probably a difficult deal to do, given he's a Liverpool player and given there's question marks over his experience because he's just had one really good season in the Championship before he got injured. But he is your out and out, sticks wide, pace, away from your full-back cross kind of winger. And I do think Everton are missing someone like that. It's very much like the right-back. I wasn't saying earlier, let's not go for a right-back. I'm just conscious of the fact that there's so many things to do and maybe it's a way of keeping O'Brien in the team. But then again, a lot depends if he believes his Patterson's good enough to be kind of like that backup or competition for it. But like a right-back, a right wing is something Everton's been crying out for a number of years. And I know it's been very hard with the finances and everything that's been going on at the club before the frequent groups take over. But yeah, a right wing is a must for me. As a central midfielder, we need pace in there as well. We've got some really good players, and that's credit to even people like I said on the last podcast, Felwell and Deitch. They've left some decent players there for Moyes to hopefully kick on. But need further quality. We need a bit of pace. So yeah, right wing.
It'd be nice to be able to move away or start to move away this summer from almost players having an asterisk next to their name. You know, Jacob Ryan's doing really well at right back, but he's a centre back.
Yeah.
You know, Jack Harrison, or someone's doing really well in the right midfield, but really they're a left midfielder. Or you know, it'd just be nice to kind of be able to take that step beyond having to rely on square pegs doing good jobs in round holes. Yeah. That would be really nice. I think that'd be progress this summer.
Without a doubt. Although we know Moyes does love a square peg and a round hole. That's no disrespect to David Moyes for that, by the way. He just likes to keep. I know he likes to keep his squad versatile and flexible, but hopefully we'll see what happens. Another one for you, Paul. A question here regarding the strikers. It was quite interesting, just considering obviously we're getting Barry over the line in the next couple of days. Toffee J says, we need an experienced striker. Beto's only had 2,469 minutes. Schmitti, 238. Barry, obviously none in the Premier League. Combined, that's a total of 2,707. It's not enough, he's basically saying. So if we're going to be looking at another striker now, again, it's going to be difficult if it's someone with Premier League experience, probably because there's going to be a premium on them.
Yeah, if we turn in terms of buying someone, yeah, as I said earlier, they come at a premium. They're only proven Premier League quality. Say if Everton were only looking to sign 3 players this summer, maybe they could commit to paying 40, 50 million on one of those strikers. But as Joe said, there's clearly money to spend, but I'm not sure Joe would know better if there's that kind of money to go and do that on one single player. I'd have to have a look at like the free agents market really and the loan market, because I do agree. I think Thierno Barry's obviously got a lot of exciting attributes, but this is his first time in the Premier League, and if we're going to have the Beto of the final 4 months of the season, I'm quite happy with him starting, because obviously he became much more of a goal threat. And I think I said it when I was on the podcast last week. I thought his hold-up play towards the end of the season began to improve dramatically, because I thought that was always the thing that, what was the reason why I always preferred Dominic Calvert-Lewin into the team. Yeah, I do. We probably, as I said earlier, it wouldn't be too bad if the Leeds game we only have the 2 strikers in, but I would definitely want a third, because it only takes 1 injury. We've seen it after Moyes came in, and there was a point where 4 or 5 strikers were out injured, weren't they? And though that was with 4 or 5 strikers, with 2 you're leaving yourself susceptible if 1 goes down, particularly if 2 goes down. And you know, I do think we need another striker. I'm not saying we go down like a Danny Ings route, because I think, with a great respect to Danny Ings, I think his time as a top Premier League performer is probably past. But if there is someone who Everton could pick up, and I could understand the Brozier kind of deal last summer, I could understand it. I think it was a massive risk given his injury record, but I personally think it might be a loan deal Everton look for up there, because if Beto's your first choice and Barry's your big money signing, you don't want to get in the way of those 2 playing every week. But yeah, I do agree with the comments. I think we need a third. I do think we need a third.
We've had a comment here from Nil Satis Yamar. Says, hey lads, any updates on Kubu? I've always wanted Everton to sign a Japanese player. So Kubu is a Real Sociedad right winger.
Yeah, Japan international.
Yeah.
I mean, just on that last point, I'm less fussed about going out and getting a third forward, even if to me was go out on loan. You know, I think that obviously the minutes there quoted a Premier League experience. Beto has had experience in Serie A. And I think that from what we saw at the back end of last look, I mean, I would agree with everyone that probably still question marks over whether Beto can be the main man in a side that wants to be, pushing for the top half. But I think that a more effective way of more effective way of trying to deal with that issue from Everton, and this will come on to the question you asked me, is not to kind of load up on forwards that you're trying to buy experience, but you're also trying to get them cheap. But you're also trying to say, well, you might not be first choice, you might not even be second choice. I mean, that's a really difficult square to circle. Really, what I think, and this is what Moyes has done well in the past, and this is what I think he'll want to do this summer now, is you have to kind of build goals and creativity in the network around the striker, so that you're not there relying on a striker to get you 15 goals a season for you to do well. You've got 3 or 4 players behind them, left wing, right wing, centre midfield, attacking midfielders, that can all chip in with 5, 6, 7, 8 goals, and that's how you get the progress. And that's where you come on to having your specialist wingers and players like Kubo, who's being offered around, I think, quite a lot. I think there probably will be some interest in him this summer. And I think he's a really talented player. Like, you look at him, he's exciting to watch. It'd be lovely to see. You just think 12 months ago how nice it was. I mean, a little bit, not quite 12 months ago maybe, but I just remember the Roma friendly and seeing Iliman Ndiaye run at players, have the ball at his feet and run and want to beat a man. And just how much of a kind of a boost that gave to the supporters, to the fan base. How many times did we hear that line that, oh, it's so nice to have a player that can get you off your chair when he picks up the ball. And someone like Kubo is someone that could do that on the right. And I think that Everton should be looking to kind of add a few more of those players, because I think that's really what they need. They need to be able to put up a lineup or have a squad of players that when an opposition is planning to play against them, they go, well, I'm not quite sure where the threat will go. Yeah. You know, last season it was like, well, if we double up on Ndiaye, then we're going to have a pretty decent chance of stifling Everton. Now we want it to be, well, if we double up on Ndiaye, then that means that the right winger might have more space, or it might mean that the attacking centre midfielder might have more space to break through in the middle, etc. We want them to be asking lots of questions about how they're going to deal with Everton, because that's not what they've been able to do over the last few years. So, someone like Kubo would be fantastic. But like I said, I think there's going to be a fair bit of competition, because I don't think there's any secret that Real Sociedad are willing to countenance or quite happy for a bidding war to be started on him. So,
I mean, without trying to take credit for your point that you just made, I completely agree, and I said that a good couple of months ago, that the way forward for me, we obviously needed a striker. We didn't know the situation with Calvert-Lewin. We know that now he's gone, Barry's coming in, but modern day football now is mainly all about your wingers. You're only really getting a striker who scores you 25, 30 goals. I know you can get like the likes of your Chris Wood and stuff like that, but your top elite strikers and your Isaac, your Haaland, they're just going to cost far too much money. And Barry could come in and he could work his way up to that goal tally. But I've used Mohamed Salah as the example. Again, he's on a different stratosphere to what we're wanting to do. Hopefully we get there at some point. But he has been the Premier League's top goal scorer. He's not even a centre forward. He is the inverted winger, and there's loads out there who can do that. So, like I say, I didn't want to take credit for your points, but I completely agree with you, without a doubt. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up getting another striker in, but the last thing you want is like a Mopai or a Rondon who comes in. The Chelsea guy you mentioned there, sorry. Roya.
I just think it's a really tough sell for to try and go out there and do it. And I think that there are other areas that need more investment and more attention right now, particularly if Barry gets over the line. The other thing as well is that Iliman Ndiaye can play through the middle. He did it all right for Sheffield United. He has done it elsewhere. And I think Alex Alcaraz could potentially do it as well. Again, like we would be moving into not quite square pegs round holes, but you'd be asking on players to utilise their versatility. But there are other players in the squad that can do that thing. So
Michael Keane.
Of
course.
The number 9 shirt's vacant, isn't it? So
how could we forget? Just one last question before we move on to some more transfer links. Paul, now Mickey Blue has basically said we need another Onana type. Yeah. I had this conversation literally a couple of days ago with friends and said he would have been perfect in this Moyes team. We understand the reasons why he didn't fulfil his potential at Everton under the previous regime. We get that. We're not going to go into that. But, Amadou Onana in this Everton team probably would have been great, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I have this argument with my eldest son quite often who doesn't rate Onana. And I said, well, that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. But he did go to Aston Villa, who were competing in the Champions League, and he had a pretty good first season there. Yeah, I maybe he's shown enough at Everton to demonstrate why he's got the potential to become a really, really top midfielder. But there were other times where he didn't demonstrate it. And potentially with Deitch, I don't think it was the right manager for him, to be honest. But yeah, we need someone with that kind of physicality and legs in there and
composure on the ball,
and also to drive forward with the ball. It was a good buy, and I think if the club would have been in a different position, he probably would have been able to extract more money for him than when he eventually went to Aston Villa. That's the kind of player. I know we're going to talk potentially about another Aston Villa a little bit later, but. Yeah, if we can find another Onana, that's I think that's got to be the model, and that's what hopefully Barry is, that kind of player, isn't it? Because even though we've now got a bit more financial freedom, until we are, hopefully, in the years to come, a top 4, top 5 club, I imagine there'll still be a lot of trading going on. So, yeah, I agree with that. Like Onana would be, it's the kind of potential kind of profile of player we need now.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to come back, is he? Listen, in the past, I've been extremely critical of him, mainly because I didn't think his attitude was great, and yeah, he didn't maybe fit into the Sean Dyche style of play, and we know he missed that awful penalty against Fulham, which cost us a place in the League Cup semi-final. He was also not part of the team, or the starting 11 at least, that went on that like 5-game run.
Yeah.
So, you know, at the time you're thinking he just clearly doesn't fit in to this Everton team, but you know, it would have been an interesting prospect if he was here, Joe. I mean, we'll come on to it now. I mean, some more transfer news according to reports. And this comes from The Athletic. Everton have shown interest in signing Aston Villa midfielder John McGinn. However, Villa have indicated that they would like to keep him. Paul told me about this link this morning. It was an interesting one.
Yeah, well, they need centre midfielders, and
do you like him?
I think John McGinn would be great at Everton. I think he feels like a Moyes and an Everton player. You know, kind of really determined, dogged centre midfielder, fight for everything. Pops up with the odd goals as well. You're not afraid to put his foot in. I think
usually against us.
Well,
He has good games against us, doesn't he?
He does. I mean, one way of stopping that would be to sign him, wouldn't it? So
let's get Callum Wilson while we're at it. By the way,
Ings, you've already mentioned him.
Yeah. So yeah, I can understand why they would have had some interest in it, but I can also understand why Aston Villa wouldn't want to count into sale. I mean, he's still a captain.
Yeah, that's why I was really surprised when Paul mentioned that to me this morning. I came out of left field for me, that one. Like, Spanny88 says McGinn is 100% a Moyes player. Yeah. But Stimpy says, I don't fancy him. I assume he doesn't reference McGinn by name, but I assume he's talking about him. I mean, he does always have a good game against us, Paul. He always does seem to play regularly for Aston Villa. They've obviously played a lot of games over the course of the last 12 months with being in the Champions League, so I'm sure he's had rests when needed, and like I say, I haven't followed his career, but his age maybe a little bit of a concern. Villa aren't going to let him go on the cheap. He is 30. I mean, what would you expect for us if you were going to like feasibly go in for him? You wouldn't want to pay any more than 15, 20 million for him, surely.
I think you'd have to, though.
Yeah, that's the problem.
I think he's got 2 years left on his contract, and as you say, what you just said then, he's really durable. Have a look at his appearance record, and he might be 30, but he plays 40 plus games every season, he seems to be, and he's still a key player for Villa. I remember when he played Paris Saint-Germain, the second leg at Villa Park, I think he scored. He was outstanding. He was absolutely outstanding. And earlier I was thinking, 30-year-old, do we want to go down that route of spending 25 million on a 30-year-old? But Joe was saying earlier in the office, like, Everton have kind of helped themselves by keeping Keane and Coleman and experience there. But there's also a lot of, Tony was saying it last week, there's also a lot of experience gone out the door in Ashley Young, Abdoulaye Doucouré and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And McGinn has experience in spades, and he's still a top Premier League performer, still a big player for Scotland. And I think, even I'm not contradicting myself, whereby Everton's model does have to be Barry, it does have to be another Onana, but there is room for experience, and he's still a really good player. Yeah, and I could you get him for 4 or 5 years? Potentially, yeah. You know, I still think it'd be a very difficult one to get out of Villa if he's their captain, but as we found with PSR, Villa seems to be one of those clubs who, despite the kind of success they've had recently in, you know, cup runs, good league places, it feels like they still have to be fairly careful at, you know, reading between the lines. I know obviously it's past July the 1st now, but you wonder, it's an interesting one, that. It is an interesting one.
I think just on McGinn, Joe, I think obviously, like Paul mentioned there, with PSR, Villa might be struggling. That surely is the only reason why he's potentially being touted as a potential sale. If he is their captain.
Well, I don't think anyone's touting him as a potential sale.
No, but he obviously, if there's interest. I mean, I just think, I haven't seen much of him. Obviously, only seen him when he played for us, and I just feel like his work rate, he never stops running, and he clearly chips in with the odd goal. Again, without repeating myself, I just find it a mad one that this could even potentially come off.
Well, yeah, I mean, the reporting from The Athletic very much suggests it's Everton have gone to Villa, and Villa has said no. So, I mean, that tells us everything.
See what happens. Well, I guess we'll keep an eye on it. Another player linked with Everton, Joe, once again this week is Manchester Manchester City's James McAtee. Everton said to be considering a move for him, with Moyes a big admirer, and according to the paper, there has been dialogue. I mean, he's been linked a number of times already since the end of the season, so he's had a really good tournament, hasn't he, with England Under-21s, obviously winning that tournament. I watched the semi-final, I think, and he was just pivotal for every goal that the Under-21s scored. I'd love him at Everton. Like, there's no doubt about that. But I've already seen teams like Dortmund interested in him. I think Juventus maybe were interested in him as well. So Everton would have a lot to do to get hold of James McAtee.
Yeah, I've been writing all summer that he's on Everton's radar. He just feels like a really obvious person for him to go to. He's out of favour at Man City. Young, promising, talented again. Kind of fits into that ballpark of kind of player like we're talking about. Thierno Barry, albeit McAtee's obviously got more experience in England, and you just look at him and you just think, it's everything that you'd want. You'd love you'd love your club to be signing a player like that. I think we'd love Everton to sign him as well. Someone that's really exciting, and you look how many players that have come out of that Manchester City academy have done well elsewhere. It just feels like an absolute production line. It's mad that they're in a position where they're obviously letting all this talent go. But you look at the riches that they've got, and you look at the players they've got, and there just isn't really a pathway for him. I mean, I think if Everton could take advantage of that, I would be really up for a deal for him. Look, as I said off summer, there is interest there, so we'll have to see where Everton go with it. But you can see why there's interest there, can't you?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That would be an exciting deal.
Surely they would. But if we were to make this happen, would you think he'd prefer to stay in the Premier League rather than go abroad?
Oh, interesting one. Well, Everton's an exciting, massive club, exciting project, isn't it? New stadium, newfound kind of belief and optimism. I think, if he's got ambitions to play for England, this would be a really good platform. But I think if some of the big German clubs are in for him, it's just becoming an increasingly popular pathway, isn't it, for young English players? And it's proven that you can have 2 years at Dortmund, you could go to Leverkusen, you could go to Stuttgart, wherever it may be, and then you could get your big move back to the Premier League after that. So, I without wanting to downplay Everton, far from it, but if someone like Dortmund was interested in McAtee, I imagine that would be a serious consideration for him. I think he's a brilliant player, and as Joe rightly said, it's just ridiculous, the talent that City have produced over the years. I think if you put 11 players together, they're probably a top 4 or 5 Premier League club.
All Chelsea, aren't they?
Yeah, they're all at Chelsea.
It's just taking Chelsea to the Champions League.
It's just ridiculous, isn't it? It's just. I wonder where he would play for Everton, because again, we just seem to have, like, don't get me wrong, in similar to Grealish, bring more quality in, absolutely, but we just seem quite well stocked in those kind of McAtee's kind of role with potentially Alcaraz, McNeil. And Jai, but don't get me. Hey, if we can afford him and he wants to come, never turn up. Good players, but I'm just not sure if we need that kind of player.
I know what you mean.
Do you know? If a right winger was available, a ball carrying midfielder or a kind of midfield general, for want of a better word, I'd still prefer that over McAtee. But if we've got the money and we're trying to build a really good squad,
sometimes a player, if we're going to use him as an example, is like too good to miss out on, isn't it?
That's it. That's the best way I'm trying to describe it as. Yeah.
Like, I think if Harrison, we know the potential that he has, Harrison Armstrong. If he was to come in, McAtee, I mean, that you'd be more inclined to allow Harrison to go out on loan and not put the pressure on him to be, a regular starter with Everton. And we've got Irabumen, Alcaraz. It's almost like thick with players there, but maybe further back it's a little bit light. I don't know with Guy and.
It's just why you were saying. I've thought it a couple of times when both you guys have been speaking, and I know this is probably part of a bigger picture thing. And let's hope Harrison Armstrong can be a first team option this year. But I know we've had to sell a lot of academy players in recent years to kind of almost keep the lights on. It feels, but at times in the not too distant future, for these kind of positions we're talking about in the squad, potentially a third choice centre back or a left back, the academy, we're going to need academy players, aren't we? Because this feels like the time, if they were there, and it doesn't feel like, Joe, you'll know better than me, doesn't feel like there's anyone quite there yet, is there, for the step up?
No. I mean, they're in the under-18s. I think they're on a pathway. There's some good big talents there. Under-21s, it's looking a little bit difficult to see who made a step up. Martin Sheriff's been in and around the first team a little bit. He's kind of got the physical profile that you could see there could be a player that could break into the Premier League team, and he's still young, so maybe that. But other than that, perhaps not. I know this divides opinion. I look back to that summer where Tom Cannon and Isaac Price left, and Stan Mills to a certain extent as well, albeit injuries kind of hampered him a little bit, and you just think if that collection of players was in the under-21s now, this might be a good season for them to be in and around the first team, get the odd opportunities, maybe one of them break into the side. Isaac Price has done brilliant, and he did all right in Belgium. He's come into West Brom and he's had a big impact there since he signed for them in January, and his record for the Northern Ireland team is fantastic. And I think if Everton had Isaac Price on the books now, then I think he'd be someone that they'd be grateful to have in and amongst that body of centre midfielders. Obviously, and this is one of the folks. You look at the personnel they brought in for that new leadership team. This is something that they are trying to do, and it's to kind of reinvigorate that academy, and it's something that started before the changes, really, because we saw money starting to be spent on under-18s last summer. Like your Braden Graham's coming in from Linfield, your Kieran Loney's coming in from Partick, your Justin Clark's coming in from AFC Wimbledon. On top of the talent that's already there with your George Morgan, your Douglas Lukiančiks, your Louis Gardners and things like that. There is talent there, and one of the big things for the next few years is to try and make sure that talent gets the chance to grow to a point where it can knock on the door of the first team. But obviously that's still some time away.
Okay, we'll just finish off with a little comment on Idrissa Gana Gueye, because this is the first show that we've done since the news was released that he did sign. So he's committed his future to Everton, Joe. He's agreed a new 1-year contract with the club, which includes an option of another year. I mean, I kind of come full circle a little bit from this pod, because it's just another box tick for me that needed ticking.
Yeah, that's it. When you got so much transition, so much changes, player of season and supporters player of the season for justified reasons, wasn't he, last season? So, if you let him go, then you've got a big hole to fill in an area where there are already holes to fill. So I can understand the reservations that they may have about what he can do over the long term. Clearly his legs showed no sign of going last season. That's fantastic. Yeah. But you can't plan for the future and be ignorant of the potential for his fitness to drop off. I think a big part of this summer is trying to build a midfield which is less reliant on him. One, so that you can build a midfield for the future for when he's not there, but two, so that you can so that you can increase his longevity by not being so reliant on him. If Idrissa Gueye is going to turn 36 in September, but you've got a midfield there that can get through games without him, well, he'll last a lot longer into that 1 or 2 years if he's being relied on for 3 in every 4 games or 3 in every 5 games. Or you've got someone capable that you can bring on for the last 20 minutes to give him a bit of a rest. That'll help him extend his career, and Everton would benefit from that as well. But look, we saw what he could do last season. I think Moyes quickly became aware of the importance of him to that setup, having him there. He's one of a couple of players there that he's earned a right to be in that historic first season at the Hill Dickinson Stadium. Hopefully he can make the most of it.
Mad one here for you, Paul. Mad stats. I've done a little bit of research. So, according to Premier League records, Idrissa Gana Gueye is 187 tackles away from surpassing Gareth Barry's all-time records. Wow. So, Barry is first with 1,028 tackles. Gueye is 8th on 842 tackles. Wow. Bearing in mind, Barry played 650 Premier League appearances. Gueye has only managed 229.
Probably says more about Everton than anything.
I think the reason I brought this up, it's a mad stat, so I thought I'd bring it in, but it is an interesting point, isn't it? Because the way Everton have been more successful since Moyes has come in has been without the ball. Yeah. And we know why Gueye has been pivotal to that. Yeah. But moving forward, we're going to hopefully look to have more of the ball, have more of possession. Yeah. So, I mean, it's probably going to take him 2 seasons maybe to surpass that. 133 tackles, I think, apparently he managed last season. Yeah. That was first out of everyone. So I don't know. I just found it all a bit mad, and it is interesting to see how Everton play moving forward.
Yeah, imagine he'd be putting a fair few tackles in at Leeds on Monday night, to be honest, because I think that is going to be a feisty first game of the season. I think it'd be a brilliant game, that one. He's a firefighter, isn't he? Like he's just so often you watch a game and he's there. He has been an absolutely fantastic signing for Everton across 2 spells, and hopefully the next 2 years, in 2 years' time, he's approaching, what, he'd be 38 when they approaching 38, and we'll talk about another year contract for him. If in that times he becomes more of a squad player, or God forbid his legs do go and he runs out of steam, Everton have more than had the value out of him, and I think it made absolute sense. And I don't think anyone should have the benefit of hindsight if we get to Christmas and he's not the player he once was last season, which I don't think will happen, because he looks like the kind of player who looks after himself. And
well, he'll be in Africa then.
Yeah,
so.
That's true. Like, hopefully he doesn't play too much in the African nations over there, because I think we could miss him for 6-7 games. But he's an intelligent footballer as well. It was absolutely no-brainer to get that one done. I'm so pleased that it has been done. Like, he's a brilliant player, and as Joe rightly said, the fact that he was fans and players player of the year, that speaks volumes, doesn't it? If both those kind of sets of people are giving you that award, shows how good you were really last season. Yeah, made up that we've got it done.
Okay, any final thoughts before we shoot off? All good? Same with you, Paul? Or any final thoughts? Just let you know, we are back tomorrow for the usual Wednesday show. Conor O'Neill's back. He's going to be on the show, so it could be an interesting one. Get your comments in to Conor from, if you remember the last show that he was on. He's come out to hide, basically. Also, give us a like. Please remember to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Drop us some 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify. Most importantly, enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you tomorrow.